Welcome to Optimizing Media Relations, our presentation and seminar today. I am Carol Dorn Sanders, the SVP of Marketing and Communications for DisposeRx. On behalf of everyone at DisposeRx, we want to thank you for participating today and for registering and being part of this event. We want to make this as informal and interactive as possible, but we do ask that you mute your line at this time. We are recording this session and want to try to minimize as many distractions as we can. But we will, feel free if you want to chime in at any point and ask a question, feel free to take yourself off mute. And we'll go from there. So this is the first time we have offered this training to our community outreach partners. So just keep in mind that this information may be a review for some of you. We tried to make the content as relevant as possible to a broad audience, understanding that some of you may have different levels of experience with marketing and communications. So if it's review, bear with us, but for others, I'm admitting people, as you can see here, but just bear with us because we know you might have different levels of knowledge and experience. We want you to know that we are so proud of each of your organizations. We're proud to partner with you at DisposeRx. This idea for a community outreach program was born from our founder, John Holliday. John would be, as some of you may know, those of you who have been partners with us over the last year, John was shot a year ago today, and we think of him every day. He would be so proud of this program. He was certainly proud after he launched it and saw the progress that we had made. But in the last year since the shooting and his passing, we have grown to almost 300 community members in all 50 states. So we're so proud of what you're doing. Your creativity never ceases to amaze us. And so we're happy to partner with you and offer this training today. The milestone that I just mentioned, the 300, we're almost at 300 community outreach members. That's one milestone that we're going to be celebrating this week. We have a milestone campaign that we have launched and or will be launching tomorrow. So stay tuned there. We have great information to share with you, exciting information to share about our growth. And so we hope you will take an opportunity to help share and promote that information in your social media channels. My partner today is Carrie Conway from Conway Communication. Carrie is an outstanding PR professional and practitioner. She has more than 25 years of experience. An interesting note, this is the fourth time that Carrie and I have worked together. I have contracted with her with 4 different organizations, and that should just illustrate to you the trust that I have in her and how much I value her experience, her energy and her perspective. So Carrie, thanks for being part of this today and really leading this effort. So without further delay, let's jump into the presentation. Just so you know, Ann Hamlin, who is our Vice President of Scientific Affairs, who also runs our community outreach program, she will follow up with you to provide these slides with you and also some supporting materials that we will reference during the presentation. So we will be sharing that information with you. Okay. There we go. So a little bit about how we have structured the presentation. So I'm going to talk about communications planning and just share with you a framework that I have used for the better part of the last 20 years. Then I'm going to toss to Carrie. She's going to do the bulk of the presentation around media relations. She's going to provide share information with you. If you don't mind muting your line, that would be great. I will try to do that. So she's going to share some tips with you about how to communicate with the media. Also, very interesting, you know, the last 6 months as we have had to deal with the pandemic, Carrie has put forth some ideas on the best ways of interacting with the media during these challenging times. Then she's also going to talk about the interview process and how to prepare and some tips to make sure that you have the best experience possible with media, especially given the fact that, print media is different than broadcast media, and some tips there on how to prepare. And then I'm going to close out the session just by going over some of the resources that we can offer to you as our community outreach partners. So this is just a framework that I've used, as I mentioned. The majority of the webinar is going to be as billed about optimizing media relations, but I really just wanted to share this framework for you that maybe could be a resource for you as you're planning out your MARCOM efforts or your communications efforts for 2021. Again, this changes with every role that I have, with every job that I have, but really just wanted to touch on some key pieces for you. So from a brand perspective, right, just really identifying and defining your organization's identity, the product or service that you might offer. Our community outreach partners are all nonprofits, and so really just to a better understanding of what you offer in your community or your state. As you mature, you might also develop a style guide that is really helpful for people in the organization, especially as you grow, to understand what the fonts are you use, the colors you use, and so you might want to develop that as part of the brand. Then, with regard to digital, I was thinking back when we were building this presentation, I was thinking back to the days when I started my career as a TV and newspaper journalist, where we didn't have any of these tools, right? We didn't have websites. We didn't know anything about email campaigns or social media, and how fortunate we are now that we have all of these channels for communication. Many of them are free, right? Free or somewhat free, unless you're placing ads. But I just feel so fortunate that we have all of these channels. Back in the day, we simply, my biggest budget back when I started at a hospital back in 1991 was our Yellow Page advertising, right? So things have changed. And obviously with Instagram and all the different new tools that we have, we'll continue to add to those, and hopefully you'll incorporate those in your planning as well. From a communications perspective, I just encourage you to develop a plan. Carrie and I meet usually in the fall to plan for the next calendar year. We try to build success metrics and develop a strategy on what we want to achieve based on what the organization's needs are. So it's really, it's impossible to develop a strong marketing and communications program unless you understand what the organization's objectives are. That everything that we do in communications and marketing should support that. Carrie and I also talk a lot about audiences, right? Understanding if you're trying to reach an internal or an external audience, and trying to tailor your communication based on the audience and their needs, right? We have a lot of different audiences here at DisposeRx, our customers, you as stakeholders, but we also have consumers, right? So that's a whole different approach as we are building out messaging, whether or not we're trying to reach B2B, what we consider B2B, business to business, or business to consumer. And so all of that, just try to keep those things in mind when you're developing your message. So the next is the message. What are your key messages? Carrie's going to talk about this when talking to the media, understanding what those 2, 3, 4 points are, trying to be really succinct and hone in on those. And that really also ties into finding your voice, right? You want to make sure that the way you're speaking, the way you approach, the way you talk about things are consistent and authentic with your message. One of the tools that we're going to share with you after is an editorial calendar. Carrie and I have been in healthcare for a long time, so we try to build them around observances, and I'll show you an example of this in a minute. But with the editorial calendar, we try to make sure that we include everything with what news announcements. It could be around campaigns, it could be around a new product launch, it could be around a new service offering. In your case, it could be around special events, but making sure that you have a project plan. So it could include news announcements, events, as I mentioned, how your social media is going to support those campaigns. It might include a newsletter. We recently introduced our first quarterly e-newsletter for those who subscribe to our website. And so that might be something that you're already doing or considering. And then we're going to talk about contributed articles. Carrie's going to go into much more depth there. Case studies, webinars, those are different things that, different tools that you can use in developing your whole communications program. And then identifying supporting material, collaterals, images, video, anything that you can collect to support your programs or your projects are helpful. So that's how we try to think about things, and it helps us move together in an efficient way, especially with contracting with Carrie. So let me see if I can forward the slide. So this is the editorial calendar. This is just a snapshot of the actual spreadsheet that we will send to you. You'll see over in the far right-hand column, those are some of the special observances that we as DisposeRx honor, and we try to draw attention to, and it's based on each month. And then we build out to the left, right? Are we going to write a blog post about something? For example, in October, it's Pharmacist Month, American Pharmacist Month. So for us, I'm looking at everything from blog posts to a press release to changing our website and the announcement bar. We will change our images for American Pharmacist Month. So it just will depend on what you are trying to do and the role that you are playing in your community. So I'm going to stop there real quick. Does anybody have a question that we can answer before I toss to Carrie?
I just wanted to verify, you did say you were going to pass along this planning calendar as just an option?
Yes, we will. We're going to forward that along with the slides. Okay. So that you have both with the with the tips in here, and also you'll be able to see the spreadsheet. Yes.
And highlighted in yellow on that planning calendar, which we hope you all will join us next April, is the National Clean Out Your Medicine Cabinet Day, which is an observance that's been created by DisposeRx. So I just want to highlight that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
National Clean Out Your Medicine Cabinet Day.
That's right. Exactly. We hope you're doing that regularly, but if not, that is the day that I guess Dr. Holliday set into effect last April of 2019, and we're going to keep that moving forward. I think we have it for the next 10 years. So, okay, Carrie, if you're ready, I'm going to toss to you, and we'll forward the slides upon your request.
Okay, so that was all very helpful with the planning. So to start with talking about media relations, which is the kind of the main focus of what we're covering today, I thought it would be helpful first to start with just kind of level set. So what are the types of media or the types of content that we're talking about and that we're going to be focusing on today? So you have your owned content, which is also known as corporate marketing or content marketing, excuse me, and you have direct control over that. So the pieces that are often generated by your organization, news releases, contributed articles, brochures, white papers, your web content. So that you have direct control over. And then there's also paid media, which is advertising or paid social content or television commercials. Obviously that's good. You're going to incur a lot more expenses if you were doing any kind of paid media. And then shared media is what's via social media. And then what we're going to focus on today is the earned media. And that is generated by media coverage, and it's what's written about your organization. And that is extremely valuable in that it offers third-party validation. It's seen as more credible. Media relations is one way you do that. If you are in the corporate setting, there's investor relations teams, influencer relations. But the key point, I guess, or difference of earned media versus owned is you have less control over the end result. So that's why a lot of what we're talking about through the rest of these slides, and making sure you have strong key messages and that you have a good process for dealing with the media. It offers ways to make sure that the end result will be a more positive thing. If you could move to the next slide, please. Okay, so we've talked about there's different types of media and they all have different requirements. So when I'm talking more broadly, so we look at local media. So those are your daily newspapers, your weekly, some are weekly newspapers. Your business journals are often weekly. They are very deadline focused for the print edition. So the daily newspapers, you know, they're wrapping things up by about 3 in the afternoon. The weeklies often have a Thursday or Friday deadline to get the paper out for the following week. All of these outlets now have online websites where they are, you know, have a 24/7 breaking news deadlines. But the local media typically want to cover more breaking or hard news, and they absolutely need a local hook or an angle. So if I'm working with the Houston Chronicle, they don't really want me to send them information about what an organization's doing in New York. They need to know about the Houston, a Houston company. The trade media, business to business, niche focused. The content varies sometimes between what's their print edition and online, but they are continuously looking for news and updating their online content. Examples of those trades would be a Pharmacy Times or a Chain Drug Review for DisposeRx. Those are outlets that we work with on a regular basis. One thing with the trades that is a really good thing to be thinking about is that they will are more likely to accept contributed article content. So that's a great avenue to get coverage outside of not having to have a reporter do an interview or write up a story. National media, so that would be the Wall Street Journal, the USA Today. Most of them often have a financial focus. They're looking for broader trends. You know, Wall Street Journal wants Fortune 500 companies or publicly traded, and that's probably the highest threshold to reach, is to get coverage in some of those national outlets. And then you also have the news wires. So Associated Press, Reuters. From a health perspective, we work with Kaiser Health News. And so they will do an article and then it gets picked up. It can get picked up broadly throughout the US. So if you get an article in the Associated Press, which is phenomenal, you can end up maybe with 100 different articles published in different publications in different papers throughout the country. And then broadcast, TV, radio, obviously, you know, they're focused on breaking news. And whenever you're pitching them, it's really important to make sure that you are explaining what type of visuals that they could capture for television. And then for radio, you know, what would be the good sound bite. And then we don't work as closely with, but bloggers are obviously another way to get coverage. And then even increasingly now we have these social media influencers. Next slide. Okay, so journalism has been undergoing quite a few changes for quite some time due to the advent of the internet, like Carol was saying. But I mean, I remember when we used to mail press releases to reporters, so that's a long time ago. So, but due to the internet and social media, and they also have shrinking advertising revenues, which have led to smaller staffs. Even some publications are folding, and I don't know if some of y'all remember back in the day where there used to be 2 daily papers in a major market, the morning edition and the evening. And so, you know, there's just been significant changes throughout the years. And while everyone has been impacted by the pandemic, I think it's really important from a media relations perspective to put the lens on understanding how it's affecting journalists. So my practice is primarily focused on health and healthcare, and I work with quite a few nonprofits, but the reporters that I'm working with, I think, are probably even more impacted than others. So, so first and foremost, just kind of understand where they are. They have extremely heavy workloads with further reduced resources. They, like many of us, are working from home and trying to homeschool kids, or have had their childcare disrupted, or might even be caring for you know, elderly parents that as a result of all of this, and they're no longer in the newsroom. So just kind of put you know, where the lens of trying to kind of understand that they're trying to do so much more with less resources. And then the best way to communicate is via email. So there, you can't call the newsroom anymore, or their office phone might be forwarded, but a lot of times it's not. And so a well-placed pitch or outreach via email is great. Related to that, I would highly encourage, when you are sending a news release, don't send unsolicited attachments, because one, it can get stuck in their firewall, and then two, just paste your release or your announcement in the body of the email. They'll be much more likely to take a quick look versus having to open an attachment, or the fact that they might not receive it in the first place. You want to make sure that you are making your experts available for video interviews now. So things have shifted how we're communicating. So just be thinking of the possibility of, needing to do a Zoom. And then finding a local news angle. Each state is handling the crisis differently. I'm in Texas. We're open. And so many reporters are really trying to cover how the pandemic is impacting their local markets. So local pitches are probably even more important right now. So find that local news angle. And then offering angles around, so tying what you're doing around COVID, but I'm going to suggest that you would make sure that you achieve a balance. So while it's helpful to tie your event or news announcement to the pandemic, COVID fatigue, it's a real thing. And so, anytime you can pitch a positive story or something that your organization's doing that, is a feel good, I think that there is even a greater desire to have some of that information, because we could all use positivity right now. And then also make sure you do your research. You can't have a static media list right now. So many people are transitioning staff. There's reporters that I worked with that used to cover, the business of health, and they have been solely transitioned to, infection rates and hospital capacity. So it's really important, before you do outreach, if it's not something you've done in a while, to really dust off your media list and make sure that it's accurate. And then the other thing is just, offer them some patience. The journalists are swamped, and it might take a little bit longer for them to get back to you than usual, but they will. They will. Did you want to add anything, Carol?
No, I think that was good. I think that a lot of the work that you all are doing on opioid prevention, right? We know that the pandemic and the opioid crisis are what we call colliding in a lot of communities, right? So there's a natural tie there. I think we have seen the opioid epidemic and addiction and those types of things. We've seen them take the back seat because of the pandemic. However, we are seeing more and more news articles and actually research being done around how the pandemic is exacerbating the opioid epidemic. So that can always be an angle you are taking in your local community. If you've seen your poison control center, if you've seen those numbers go up, or if you've heard about first responders or the sheriff department talking about increases in overdoses. So those are just things to keep in mind, and why what you're doing is more important than ever.
Okay, so we talked about the the changing needs of media. And so that also means that your media relations, your public relations efforts really need to be more targeted and more relevant than ever to stand out with everything that's going on. So some of the tools that we use in communicating to the media, obviously the press release, news release, but that's not that shouldn't be the only thing you would ever send out. I would save that for, more of your more significant news announcements. But you also, media advisories are an excellent way, especially to communicate with the broadcast media. So if it was, say it was an in-person event, and we'll have a lot of those moving forward again, I hope soon. But that would be geared toward an assignments editor at a broadcast outlet, and you want to make sure you're communicating what is the visual potential. And if it were for radio, what would be the opportunity to catch any kind of sound bites.
Can I just Can I just jump in here, Carrie, if you don't mind? So if you go to our website and we've got some hyperlinks that you'll find in the deck when we send it to you, you will see the difference between a press release in our newsroom. You can go and you can see the difference between a press release and a media advisory, as we did announcing our webinar, the 3rd and 4th webinar with Sesame Street that we just published. I believe it was yesterday, right, Carrie? Yes.
Yeah.
And so just something to keep in mind if you want to see the distinction between the two. Sorry.
And then the other way to communicate your news is through op-eds in your local papers or letters to the editor or commentary. So take a, have a position and offer a call to action. And then I mentioned previously that with the trade publications, there are greater opportunities right now for contributed articles. And some of the local papers might even accept guest content or guest features. Contributed articles, we are actually really stepping up our efforts to get more of those in the queue with publications. And even sometimes they would be appropriate where we might do something with a community outreach partner if there's a really good story. And so consider that, working with DisposeRx on that, and we would make it painless, right, Carol?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we could get something like that placed in the trades, and maybe it would be co-authored or something like that. Also, just make sure, if a reporter's not able to cover something that you're doing, capture photos, like high-res photos, and ask if they would be, if they're not able to cover something, would they be willing to accept those for publication. And then not everything needs a press release or a media advisory. A well-placed email pitch that's very short and sweet and reaches the right reporter can be very effective in getting them to do a story. So especially if there's something going on in your community and you might have the solution, or just a quick pitch of, are you covering this? And if you are, we'd be happy to help, or we would offer a perspective. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, so, and then when we're talking about what do you want to communicate to media? So what are the examples of the different types of news? And a lot of this is common sense, but any change or controversy, any key new programs or partnerships or research that you might have, new products. Reporters love numerical data. And one thing too is they love surveys. So for another nonprofit client, they actually did an employer survey on SurveyMonkey and on views of employers on their health benefits and related to COVID. And I mean, it got coverage in Los Angeles Times and in national media. So if you have a group that you could survey or on any topics, doing any kind of results of that, that's a great idea to get some coverage. Communicating your events, invite the media to attend your events. If you're holding webinars on key topics, invite them to listen in, because they're not able to travel right now. They're not attending as many in-person events. So I am finding that a lot of the reporters are listening in on webinars and covering them as they would a meeting that they might have attended in person. Partnerships, organizational announcements, those, and industry recognitions, while they're not really as newsworthy, you still want to let, it's still worth doing. Okay, next slide, please. I think you skipped one, Carol.
Oh, there we go. Sorry.
No worries. Okay, so this is a lot of this is common sense, and it's how you would just treat your your key stakeholders and interact with your board or your members. But develop relationships is the key to a solid media relations program. So first and foremost, and I already mentioned it previously, is to have a good media list. And again, like I said, it's changing, so make sure you're updating it regularly. And because there's nothing worse than just kind of throwing something out and just kind of hoping it sticks. And the reporters don't want any more email than they need anymore, quite frankly. So just make sure you're targeted and you have a good list. It's also important to read their articles or follow their coverage, their features that might be broadcast, to know when you're doing an interview what they've covered previously, the kind of angle they take, and that you are able to offer comment that's relevant to their focus. Engage with them on social media. So if they're posting articles, even if you're not included in one, retweet or repost on LinkedIn, offer a comment. And then when you do get articles, they're getting judged on their clicks and, the number of people that react to their articles. So make sure to send, a thank you over social media or LinkedIn and share the articles. If you are new to an organization, or if there's a reporter that's new to a beat, I would encourage you just to reach out via email and introduce yourself, introduce your organization, make sure and let them know that you want to invite them to events. And it's also not a bad thing to just say, would you have 15 minutes for an introductory conversation so we can let you know about our organization, what our goals are, and what our concerns are, and the things we're working on, so that when you might be writing a story, you might think of us as a resource. So I would encourage you to do that if you haven't already. And I already said, treat your media like your key stakeholders. Be responsive to their deadlines. I can't tell you how many times I get an email where a reporter might have reached out directly to a client, and 4 days later, she emails me and forwards me the email and says, I got this inquiry. Well, that train has left the station. So whenever you get a request from a reporter, the first thing I would ask is, what's your deadline? And then just make sure that you are respectful of that and responsive to that. And just try and make sure you help them so that they can get their story out. And then, help them, suggesting story ideas, obviously not overdoing it, but if there's key trends that you identify or something like that, or based on something that they've already written that you think they might find of interest, suggesting story ideas, just like I said, via a simple email, is not a bad thing to do. Be respectful of their need to be objective. If there's something controversial going on in your community and you have a perspective, they're going to try and get, they're not going to maybe just talk to one source. They're going to speak to several. So what you're after is balance. And then just keep in mind quality versus quantity. So every time you do a press interview, please don't expect that you're going to get quoted. Sometimes it might be a conversation on background only, or sometimes that writer might have spoken with 5 people and copy editing shortened their article and your quote might fall out. So always be willing, even if you don't get quoted, the first time you speak with someone, just to be a resource, because very likely then they're going to try that much harder to get you included in their next piece. And then just, again, getting on their source list. So when you do have an opportunity to speak with media, make sure that you're offering value, so that you're offering, a good soundbite, or you're coaching your spokesperson to do the same. And, be known for being credible, offer objective commentary. Be willing, like I just said previously, just to do interviews on background only without expecting anything necessarily to come out the very next day. Establish yourself as a good quote. And so that is, a colorful, conversant, non-wonky, avoiding acronyms or industry speak comment. And don't ramble on. And then that will help them be able to get a good quote. I will be facilitating interviews, and I have one client that I've worked with for like 15 years. And after the interview, I'll always say, I think this is going to be the quote that gets picked up. And we kind of have a little banter going about which one we thought was most colorful. So just try and make sure you leave them with something that is, alliterative or something like that. Offer big picture points of view. And then on the, touch base with them on a regular basis, but don't inundate them with every single thing you're doing. Be selective. And then, Carol, this was one of the things that you and I were talking about. So you want to
Yeah, so just make yourself available. You know, back in the day when I was doing TV and newspaper, the people who pitched ideas to me that I knew that I could go to on a slow news day, you know, all reporters, it's not like it used to be when we were trying to fill dailies, and the quotas are different, right? They pick up a lot more AP articles now than actually creating new content. But those, I knew the people in my communities that I could go to on slow news days. Always knew that the PR director at the hospital, when I was in TV and newspaper, I always knew she had something. She would make time for me, right, to create a story to help me meet my quota. The other piece I will add in this is to help them be as efficient as possible. This going back to what Carrie mentioned, the deadline piece. But if once we get back to normal, whatever community you're in, I know you're open in Texas, Carrie, and Florida's open, but most of the rest of the states are not moving that freely, right? But let's just say that if they're coming to cover your event, if you're having you know, a recovery month event or whatever you might be doing around Take Back Day or whatever, right? Make sure that you have their interviews lined up. Make sure you've already thought through what B-roll is. B-roll for a television reporter is like video that will cover the content, right? The voiceover track. So you want to make sure that you have all of that lined up, that you've thought through that process for them, so that they can get in and get out and get back and get their story filed, either print version or television. So something just to keep in mind when you're working with them.
I'm going to add to that you also want to make sure you have headshots available for print. So if you have someone who did an interview that you've got everything they need very quickly. So if it's photos, and the other thing is try and minimize the number of emails you're sending back to them. So if you're going to pull together 3 different people that are going to speak with them, please avoid the one-off emails. Just wait till you get kind of everything they need in one place. I'm going to schedule this, this, and this for you, and does that work? And then that would be appreciated.
Okay.
Okay, so then this is just this is a helpful, I mean, just maybe to refer to later, but so when you're doing an interview, so prepping for the interview, that is really important. So make sure to do your homework, like I already mentioned previously, read, watch their work, understand the beats that they cover, and make sure that you or your spokesperson are offering comments and content that's going to be relevant to their audience. And, you know, reporters have egos too. So anytime you can even weave in well, I saw you covered, XYZ, and so that if there's any way you can kind of throw in that you follow them, I think that especially these days is appreciated. So just make sure you are, know who you're talking with. And then the other thing will be if you can get potential questions in advance. What's the what might have prompted your story? Just to ask questions before you do an interview, so then that way you don't get caught off guard, and that also you're offering comments in context that are helpful, and then you'll be more likely to be included. The other thing with that is if you have to create background briefing documents, like if you are staff and you're going to create background materials, that's also very helpful. Who's the reporter, what are recent articles they've written, what's the focus of the publication, that kind of thing. So make sure you are prepared from the background perspective. And then here's just some suggestions on during an interview. A lot of times they're going to be 15 to 20-minute calls, and the reporter just wants to jump in with their questions. So always just kind of take a second just to say, can I offer you real quick overview of our organization or our areas of focus, because I don't always assume that they're familiar with you. Now, if it's someone you've had a long time relationship with, that's different. But if it was a new reporter, a lot of times just ask for that elevator speech right at the very beginning. And then Carol has already mentioned the importance of staying on message and having messages. So you want 2 to 3, messages and proof points that you want to offer. I would always encourage you to stay on the record. I don't know that any good ever comes out of going off record. Sometimes you can have a conversation on background, but I just prefer and recommend to my clients that everything you share is it can be, you know, you're okay that it would be published. And then with that key messages at the end of an interview, a lot of times they'll say, is there anything I didn't ask you? Or is there anything you wanted, you know, to say? And I always cringe when, and my clients, for the most part, they don't do it because they know that I cringe, but don't ever say, oh no, I think you've covered it all. That's your opportunity to offer your messages one more time, to reiterate, or maybe even add another, you know, comment or two of something that you wanted the reporter to ask you, but they didn't. So always take advantage of that opportunity of the closing question. And then the other thing is just directing the conversation. So just really trying to, when you do an interview, to remember what it was you want to speak about. And then, you know, there's a whole media training that you would do, I mean, that you could do, but if it's on the phone, you want to pause and you want to stop and ask, you know, check for understanding, because they might not be able to jump in, versus if it was a person, you know, a face-to-face interview, you can see that they want to jump in. So just the nuances are different if it's a phone interview versus, and now we're doing Zoom interviews. So, and then post-interview, I would highly encourage to be responsive to any follow-up questions. That seems to be sometimes an issue where, you know, they've done an interview, they're on deadline, and then they have that one last question or want to clarify, and then someone doesn't get back to them. That's not helpful. We already talked about don't be expected to be quoted every time, and then to thank them and to share their stories. Carol, anything you want to add?
No, I think that's good. We did have one question about if they needed to send a press release with an attachment. Is PDF the best format, or what do you recommend there?
I would recommend PDF, but I would also recommend that you don't send it until they said they wanted it, right? So it would be, you know, here's the story, here's, you know, we have this announcement coming out, a 1-sentence, 2-sentence summary. Would you like me to send you the release? But for most part, I always just put the press release in the body of an email. I don't ever ask them if they want an attachment for the most part. The Word document is used for posting it online. And to the wire if you're going to put something over the wire, but I really usually just send it in an email.
Okay, so before I talk about and wrap up with you and talk about our resources that we can offer, do you have any other questions for Carrie or me that you want to take yourself off mute or include in chat? Anything that we need to discuss? Okay, so just going through the resources for what we can offer you. Obviously, we've really tried to package this so you understand what we bring to the table as part of this partnership, right? So obviously, if as one of our members, we have donated packets to you in your community. But we also are offering training for your staff members, much like we've done today, right? We have another one scheduled. We'll get that on your calendars about social media, how to optimize social media. But if there are other topics that you think would be of value, please let us know. Reach out to Ann, let her know, or you can reach out to me, and I'm happy to take note of that, and we can pull something together or pull in other resources from other partner organizations that we work with. Community education materials. So those are our flyers, postcards, those types of materials that we will co-brand for you. You will notice that there's a hyperlink here, and when we send you the deck, this is going to take you to our website and our resource center for community outreach. If there are materials that you think would be of interest, again, we're happy to co-brand, and we are willing to do some customization on those materials as well. We also provide you with access to our FAQs. Those are somewhat helpful when you're out in your community, especially if you get questions from community members. We'd like to think that you have familiarized yourself with the FAQs. If you're doing a community event, again, when we all get back to normal, if you're doing a demonstration of the product, you're probably going to get many of the same questions that we get, right? Like, what happens if my pet eats the powder, or what happens if a human eats it? So familiarize yourself with the FAQs, just so you're able to talk about DisposeRx. But again, don't ever hesitate to reach out to us if you get specific questions that you don't feel comfortable answering. Instructions for use, we have those. We've just updated the instructions for use to include liquids, because we were getting a lot of questions about how the powder, how the polymers work on liquid. So those are updated. We do have a demo video that you should feel free to use in your materials, in your social media. Let me just tell you too that the videos that you have done recently, many of you that you've shared with us, we are uploading them to our website. We're promoting them on social media. Again, you guys are so creative and we love that. So let us know how we can support your efforts. Anne has been gathering grant information at the federal level and what we're able to see at the state level, and she's sending that out consistently now. And so we're trying to make that more robust, and hopefully that you'll see that as a resource for you. I mentioned the dedicated resource center on our website. We also, whenever we just started doing that in 2020, where we are doing press release announcements, either monthly if we have 10 or so new community outreach members, but usually on a quarterly basis, making that announcement so that we're introducing you all in our partnership. We do list you, each of our community outreach members, on our website, and we encourage you to do the same. If you have a partner section on your website, we would love for you to include our logo. If you need material from us for that, if you'd like to include a product photo, we do have those on the website that you can download, but do not hesitate to reach out to us to let us know how we can support you. Media relations assistant for special events. If you are doing an event in your community and would like for Carrie or me to review your press release, please reach out to us. If you want us to just do a little bit of a constructive criticism or critical thinking with you, we're happy to do that. We can also provide a quote from William, our president, or also Ann Hamlin, if that would be of interest. So we are here to support you for that. Social media engagement and promotion. As soon as you sign up with us, we are following you. We're following all of our community outreach partners. And so we are going to promote you as much as we can on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So thanks.
I would just add, if you've created a new Facebook account or Instagram or Twitter, if you would just ping us, because we try to follow that. But when you first get on board, we do look to make sure and we try to follow. But if we're not, that means we want to be. So let us know.
Yeah, and another thing is a blog post. So our blog is fairly active. It's fairly robust. We do highlight a number of our community outreach partners on there. So if you feel like you are, doing great things. I will tell you, we've got like 3, 4 in the queue right now where we've not been able to catch up because we have a lot going on. But we want these stories. We love these stories, and we think it's important to know what's happening there. So just, keep us in the loop and let us know how we can help promote what you're doing. And then special events. So we mentioned earlier National Clean Out Your Medicine Cabinet Day. We also have Take Back Days that the DEA sponsors in April and October. The next one, the one in April was canceled because of COVID. We do know they are doing an event October 24th. If you are participating in DEA Take Back Day, if you have some sort of activity going on in your community, please let us know. We are doing a press release about our retail pharmacy customers and the programs that we are supporting. We also have a webinar that we're doing in the state of Ohio that we will highlight. And we'd love to tell the story about what our community outreach partners are doing in that press release, and in any supporting media that we do for outreach. So please let us know if you're doing anything around DEA Take Back Day, and we'll reach out to you again closer to National Clean Out Your Medicine Day in April. So I see, let me check chat real quick here. I see that there are, for some reason I cannot get it.
I think you've answered the questions, and I just
Okay.
messaged Roseanne saying that you or Ann will get back with her on that.
Okay. Okay, so does anyone have any other questions that we have not covered in the session today? Okay. We so appreciate what you do. We appreciate what you're trying to do in your communities and the efforts that you put forth. We value your partnership. So please let us know how we can support what you are doing. I will in the email that Ann sends to you with the deck and with the spreadsheet for the editorial calendar, I will have her include my email address in there. And so feel free to reach out to me and let us know what we can do to support your efforts. Again, thank you so much, Carrie. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your leading this effort. And thanks again, everyone.